Yo, what's up everybody, Jumpin here, and today I'm going to be showing off my really overpowered strength build in Elden Ring. Originally this was going to be a pure strength build, but then it became a hybrid build because I had so many points left over. And it is meant for PvP, but it does wreck PvE. I've done co-op with it, I fought bosses. It is really good in PvE as well. But I'm mainly going to be talking about PvP, and I do want to get in on the meta debate. I've been hearing all these opinions about what should be the 1v1 dueling meta level. We're not talking about PvE, we're not talking about invasions, just the dueling meta, which a lot of people are saying 150, and there are a lot of people saying 125. Now, originally, I was all for the 150 idea, because once I found out about the soft caps, I knew, okay, we're probably going to need a higher level in this game. Then I made this build. This is a level 150 build. And to me, it's kind of crazy because of all the things I can do with this build. I have a giant Colossus Greatsword, which is just overpowered because of the poke. If you crouch, you can poke people. If you have Bloodhound Step, you can use that and constantly keep poking at people. And that poke is super good at roll catching. It's really strong. And if you can trade with people, you're going to outdamage them most of the time. Now, besides that, I also have the heaviest armor in the game on, the Bull Goat, which is basically the Havel armor of this game. I have a ridiculous amount of poise, so I don't stun, and it makes it so easy to actually trade with people. I have the soft cap for Vigor, which is 60, and I have 66 strength, so when I two-hand, I have 99 strength for my weapon damage. And on top of all that, I can actually have buffs, because I have enough points to get enough faith and enough mind that I can cast these buffs. To me, that's a little insane for a PvP build. And once I made this build and I figured all this out, I've changed my opinion. I don't think 150 is the right level. I think it's too high. I think there's too much potential to get too much out of a build. I know this is a very complicated issue, mainly for the pure casters and also for the hybrid builds. The casters will have trouble because you probably want to have a lot of mind if you're going to be casting a lot. And if you are a hybrid build, you're going to be splitting your damage. Now, the damage in this game is so overtuned. It is insane. Most duels come down to, if I can hit you with my cheese, I'll destroy you. If you hit me with your cheese, you'll destroy me. So do we really need the soft caps for the damage? Probably not. If you want to have a very healthy and interesting dueling meta, I don't think that we need to be one-shotting each other. Another thing, of course, is just the poise. Poise is so overpowered right now in Elden Ring. I don't know if they're ever going to adjust it or what, but right now, endurance is really all about poise. You don't need a lot of endurance on a build unless you're just trying to get a lot of poise. And the big problem is that more and more people are going to figure this out, and everyone's going to be stacking poise, and then it's just a trade-off. Who's going to outpoise the other one, and who's going to get the biggest damage in when there is that trade. Dueling and 1v1 is really all about build versus build. Now, the issue, of course, with higher levels is that there is no such thing as a build. When you can do everything, then you really don't have a unique build. And there are going to be trade-offs. That's the way it works. You have to kind of figure out what you need to do to make your build work. And that's what makes it interesting. And this build does have some trade-offs. It's not perfect, but the trade-offs are so minor that the benefits just totally outweigh them, and it really doesn't even matter. Now, if I was going to just think about a really good strength build, what comes to me is that it should be a build that uses big weapons that scale off of strength. If I want some heavy armor, I can do that, and maybe I can get poise because I'm using slower weapons, but I shouldn't be able to use buffs too. I mean, I have to have a trade-off, and if this level was lower on this build, I would probably just get rid of the faith altogether. I wouldn't need it, so it would make it work, and maybe I could still have the faith if I wanted to do buffs and I wanted to be somewhat of a hybrid, but the trade-off would be I need lighter armor. I have to lower my endurance, so I'm not going to have as much defense, and I'm not going to have all that poise. So that's the whole thing when it comes to these builds, and at 150, I feel like people are just going to be able to figure out all these crazy things that they can do. I was totally on board for 150 because of the soft caps, But once I realized and I made this build and I started thinking about poise and I was able to stack everything it totally changed my mind. And from what I've seen from just all the duels I've done with this build, 150 is pretty crazy. There's a lot of insane builds out there, and almost everybody is running heavy armor. And do we really want that for the meta? It's up to the community to decide. I've heard a lot of people make their arguments for 150. I've heard all the arguments for 125. I've even seen people say we should meet in the middle at 135. And at 135, you can match with 150, or you can match with 125. I really don't know the answer to this, and I think that it's going to take a while for the community to finally come up with something. And it's going to be tough. I think FromSoft could actually get in on this, though. In a way, I kind of wish that they would change Vigor. I want the old soft cap back for Vigor. I don't want less health, though. I think that we need even more health because of the insane damage that everything does in this game. The more health, the better. But just lower the soft cap and hard cap for Vigor, and then a lot of builds can save some points if you are a hybrid and you need some more points and you're starving. 60 Vigor really takes a lot away from your build when you're talking about 125. That's the thing that's really tough. So I really wish they would change that. But everything else I think is okay. It's just the Vigor that's the problem. Everybody wants to have the soft cap for health. That's just the reality. If you're doing PvP and you don't have that soft cap, you're not really doing your build right. And I think that's the biggest issue of all. Now originally I was going to actually make two videos. One talking about the PvP meta and giving you guys my opinion on it. And then the other one was going to be about this build. I decided to combine the two together because I can kill two birds, one stone. And I can actually show this build and give you the example of why I feel 150 is too high. I think this build is a very good example of what you can do with a 150 build if you just mess around with it and figure it out, and how insane it can be. Being able to do everything I can do, I just think is a little overkill. And I just really feel like I should be more limited for a PvP build. But that's basically all I wanted to say. Now I'm going to go ahead and break down the build for you and tell you everything that you're ever going to want to know. Alrighty guys, well, let's go and talk about the build now. I'm going to start with the stats, and I do have a talisman that's boosting my stats. I'm going to talk about that in a moment. But I have 60 Vigor, 13 Mind, 49 Endurance, 70 Strength. I have 14 Dexterity, and 25 Faith. I did not level up the Dex, the Intelligence, or the Arcane at all. Now, if I wanted to switch this to a 125 build, what I would do is I would drop the Faith completely. I would bring my Mind back down to be default, and I would only have 66 Strength. If you have 66 Strength and you two-hand your weapon, you're going to have 99 Strength because you get a 33% bonus. Now, from my testing, though, if I have like 80 Strength and I two-hand, I do get a better damage bonus that way. So I guess it does go over 99. But I just don't see that it's necessary to hit my damage soft cap. If I'm using a giant strength weapon, I'm always going to hit hard. So I think that's fine. I don't have to have the maximum damage possible. Now, if you're wondering about this build though, having the 49 endurance means I can equip all this heavy stuff. And I actually have a little bit of wiggle room to play around because I do like to duel these two halberds for PvE. It's a lot of fun. The 13 Mind is because of the buffs. What I like to do is cast two of my buffs, use an FP potion, cast my other two buffs, use another FP potion, and I'm good to go. Now let's talk about the buffs real quick. I have Blessings Boon, which is going to give me health regeneration. This has a really long duration on it. And I have Golden Vow, which gives me a defense buff, and it also gives me an attack buff. Use an FP potion. And then I have Valk's Dragon Bolt, which is going to buff my weapon with lightning. And then finally, Flame grant me strength. Now with all of that, I'm going to have a pretty crazy AR. It's going to be 1326, which is pretty insane. Now you already know what the weapon is. The weapon is the Heavy Greatsword. It's a Colossus sword. And the Colossus swords are just kind of busted because of their pokes. All you got to do is crouch and poke, or you can use Bloodhound Step. If you do that, you can step and poke, and it catches people's rolls. If you have a lot of poise like this and you can trade with people, you're going to hit them very hard. and a lot of times they're going to panic roll immediately afterwards. So unless they are also using Bloodhound Step, you can really destroy people. I think Bloodhound Step is probably the best Ash of War in the entire game just because of the utility of it. And I'm seeing everyone use it now in PvP. It makes a lot of sense. You can avoid a lot of stuff with it. The only annoying thing is if you're doing invasions and you go in and let's say there's a gank squad, you kill the co-op gank squad, and then you only have the host can just run from you. I've seen that before. That's really annoying. And that's the one thing about Bloodhound Step that I just hate, is the ability to just run away like crazy with it. Now, Royal Knight Resolve is also very good. You can use that if you want to use this sword in PvE. Now, the other weapon I like, though, is this Knight Rider's Glaive. I think that these are a lot of fun. I like to dual wield them, but what I use on these, I have Giant Hunt. That's a pretty fun move to use. It's actually really good in PvP. It catches people all the time. And then the other one I have is Royal Knight's Resolve, just because I want the increased damage. This is a great weapon in PvP as well, because of the running attack is insane. And also the poise damage that the Colossus Sword does and the Halberd does when you two-hand is insane. It's really good. But that's the reason why you need to have like more than 100 poise, is because if you want to not get stunned by one of those weapons, you need to basically have maximum poise. Which if you're using the Bull Goat's armor, which is the ugliest armor in the game, but it gives you the most poise, you can do that by using the Bull Goat's Talisman. This gives you 33% more poise, and basically I can have 133 poise, which means I can take a Halberd hit, I can take a Colossus Sword hit, and not get stunned. I mean, in general, if you just have 100 poise, most of the time that's good enough if you're fighting like against a katana or a rapier or something like that. But if you want to just play it safe, you want to have maximum poise for the weapons that can actually break your poise. Now, I'm using the L-Tree Favor. This is pretty much standard on every build. HP, stamina, equip load. Because of all this heavy stuff, I have to use the Great Jar's Arsenal for the equipment load. And then finally, I'm using the Radagon Source Seal. This will give me 20 levels. It's 5 in Vigor, Endurance, Strength, and Dex. Really awesome. But it does increase the damage that you take. Now, what that means is that it's going to lower the percentages of your damage negation. And you can kind of see the difference now. If you look at my physical, it's like 29. If I take it off, I can show you right now, it's going to be 38. So it's about a 9% drop for me. But if you really want to make it up and you don't care about having maximum poise, because most of the time you don't need maximum poise, you could throw this on. If you throw this on, which is the Dragon Crest Great Shield Talisman, it's going to make up the difference. And in fact, you're going to have more physical defense. Now, your magic defense is still low, but magic attacks, for the most part, you can easily dodge with Bloodhound Step. That's not a problem. It's just the physical a lot of times you have to worry about. So this is an option you can do, but you also have other options for the talisman if you want to do them. One is just more HP. It gives you like a couple hundred more HP. It's useful. It's nice. The other one is, I do like the Claw Talisman for PvE, for doing jump attacks. If I want to dual wield those halberds, for example, that's a lot of fun. The Old Lord's Talisman is nice for the spell duration, mainly because of things like Flame Grant Me Strength. That has a pretty short duration. This is going to extend it, but this really extends Golden Vow and Blessing's Boon. I mean, they go up by a lot with this. If you're using any type of actual skill, the Shard of Alexander is really good. And the main one for PvP, though, I always use is the Bull Ghost Talisman, just because I want to have that maximum poise at all times. So that's basically the build. I didn't talk about the seal. Let me talk about that real quick. Now, you have a couple options here, but the Finger Seal is the best one. It doesn't affect any of the buffs besides the lightning buff for your weapon. It will affect that. The difference between all the seals, I've tested them, the Finger Seal seems to be the best, and it's kind of strange because the scaling isn't even as good as some of the other ones. But you could also use the Dragon Communion Seal. The reason why this one can be nice is because it has 0 weight to it. Now, when you cast your lightning buff for your weapon, you're going to lose a little bit of damage, but it's only like 10. That's it. And if you need to make up that weight then you can always do that. Now, real quick, let me show you something for PvE, because you know that this is really good in PvP, but I do want to show you something for PvE as well. Basically, what you can do, and this is one of the reasons why I really think that this is a great PvE build as well, is you can actually stun certain enemies that are very annoying, because a lot of times they will break the stun. So like these guys, for example, after you hit them a couple times, they will normally break your stun and they will attack you. Well, if you're doing the crouch tech where you just keep poking the entire time, they can never break the stun. And there are a lot of enemies like this. Enemies that you can normally hit a couple times and then they're going to break the stun and they'll hit you back. Well, with this sword and this crouch poke, you don't have to worry about that at all. So it's just insane. This is super nice for PvE as well. And you just do a lot of damage. And if you're doing the Bloodhound step, you can actually dodge through so many of the boss's crazy attacks. It's really, really good. And the pokes in general will do big chunks of damage. And another thing too is that when you talk about like the stance defense or stance damage you'll do to knock the enemies down, the Colossus weapons are always going to do like the most. So they were going to knock them down real quick. Alrighty guys, well that's going to basically do it for the video. I wanted to give my opinion about the meta, because once I made this build and I figured out like, wow, I have all these extra stats, I can get all these buffs, I just felt like it was kind of ridiculous, and it totally changed my mind on the whole debate about what level should the dueling meta be. I want to say personally, I think 125 sounds good to me. I know some people want to meet in the middle at 135. I don't see a problem with that, but I just think 125 would probably be best. And I definitely don't think it should be lower than 125, because if it was, then the pure builds are just going to completely dominate. Hybrid builds and spellcasters just won't be able to compete at a lower level than 125. But you guys should try this build out. If you're not even into PvP, you can use it in PvE. It's very good. It's really easy to make. You can get the great sword very early on, and then eventually you can get the armor as well. And it's going to dominate. It completely dominates. Alrighty guys, well I would really appreciate it if you could like this video for me. It definitely helps me out. Be sure to subscribe for future Elden Ring videos, and if you do, make sure to click the bell. That way you can stay notified. Thank you so much for watching, and I really do hope that everyone has a very nice day, and peace out.